Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your Viceroy of Verisimilitude, your Master of Fun and Wonder, your Chancellor of Cheerfulness, and your Archduke of Banterbury, in addition to, of course, being the existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am here once again with Robservations, the show about something. This is Robservations episode number 370. And I, of course, am robcasting at you, right here from the Robservatory, you imagination connoisseurs of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. I think the best community on YouTube, pretty much. I mean, if your participation and your wit and your good humor is any indication, we truly do have the best community on YouTube. And in these trying times, I want to, just in case I forget, I want to thank all of you for participating in the channel, all the different ways you can participate, not just supporting me, whether it's financially, whether it's sending me your thoughts and letters, which are amazing, also going to the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page and participating there, because I know the Richard really appreciates it, all the moderators appreciate it, and also our new show, Whining About Movies, which has episode number, is it 5, maybe? Episode 5 tonight, maybe 6? I think 5? Tonight we are discussing Jean-Jacques Benet's, I think his masterpiece, Betty Blue. There are two versions of Betty Blue. We will be discussing the 1991 director's full cut of the movie, and it is available on Criterion Blu-ray. It's also available on an earlier release from my beloved, the UK's Second Sight home entertainment. Is it Second Sight Home Entertainment? I'm not sure. The company that is making Dawn of the Dead right now, the definitive release of Dawn of the Dead, the ultimate Dawn of the Dead. And Second Sight actually put out a version of Betty Blue years before Criterion did, with both versions, both the director's cut and the original theatrical version, 120-minute theatrical version. The director's cut's, I think, 185 minutes. And they also produced a terrific documentary. I want to say that came out in 2013. Not entirely sure of that, but we will be discussing that, Elizabeth and I, tonight at 8 o'clock with a bottle of wine. She'd never seen Betty Blue before, and it kicks off our little mini-series on tempestuous relationships. And let me tell you, Wednesday's movie's a doozy that I talk about a lot, but Elizabeth hasn't seen it, and I'll give you a hint. It's from 1981. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, a lot of craziness going on in the world today, but, you know, I also want to point out that I understand what everybody's going through, and I just want to reiterate the fact that I too understand that we are practicing social distancing here, like Social D, what's up? Not exactly what it used to be, but we are practicing it here at this household, the Bell Burnett household, and it seems to be working out so far. But yeah, it is what it is, and we're all doing our part. Kind of like in Starship Troopers. I'm doing my part. I hope you are too. Are you being good citizens? But I just want to make sure I do understand what people are going through, and I understand across the world many people have lost their lives. But look, this show is to talk about the things we love. It's to talk about what it means to be an imagination connoisseur. And being an imagination connoisseur does not stop. It's like the Terminator. It will not stop. And that's why I'm here, talking to you guys. But I have to start with something that I was a little shocked about. Once again, a Hollywood Reporter article. I couldn't resist this. This weekend, the box office dropped to 0. Wow. So this comes from Pamela McClintock, and it is her reporter's notebook, the weekend when the box office hit 0 for the first time. This was published in the Hollywood Reporter today at 6:40 a.m. Pacific time. My alarm clock has woken me between 5:45 a.m. and 6 a.m. on nearly every Saturday and Sunday for the past decade in order to cover box office for the Hollywood Reporter. My go-to coping mechanism, believe me, I'm not a morning person, is to hit the snooze button 2 or 3 times, providing the illusion that I get to sleep in. By 7 a.m. latest, after coffee or tea, I've started writing and I'm prepared for the onslaught of grosses flooding my inbox. And now, utter silence. As of last Friday, and for the first time in the 100-plus year history of the motion picture business, virtually all cinemas in the U.S. were closed amid the coronavirus pandemic, as well as in much of the rest of the world. On Sunday, my heart skipped a beat when I received a 9 a.m. PT email from ComScore, the industry's receptacle for grosses. Perhaps there were still enough locations open to make the effort worthwhile, but when I opened the attached Excel sheet, it was empty. And an inconceivable reminder that cinemas, like so many other businesses, have gone from full steam to no revenue in the blink of an eye. Like many people, as National Association of Theater Owners Chief John Filthian told, it looks like Filthian told me during a recent interview. He and I are among the numerous members of the box office tribe scattered across the world. Throughout the weekend, and especially on Sunday, teams of people at the major Hollywood studios and indie distributors collect data and blast numbers and analysis to reporters, studio chiefs, producers, directors, and talent. I can't possibly count the number of times those of us on the perpetual box office duty have commiserated about how nice it would be to have a break. We celebrated when we gained an hour in the fall and griped when the clocks turned forward in the spring. Even during vacations post 9/11 and personal crises, in my case, major cervical spine surgery last year, which wiped me out for 5 weeks, all of it still peaked at the numbers flowing in sooner or later, even when off duty. Never could we have imagined a full stop. Eric Loomis, a don of the distribution business who presently works at United Artists Releasing, is famous for waking up at 4 a.m. 7 days a week. By 5:30 a.m., he sends out projected grosses for the previous day. That's in addition to a detailed analysis on the weekends of how new movies and recently released titles have performed. Last Thursday night, he realized he had to let go. I sat at my computer at 11 p.m., he recalls, and saw that the re-release of The Big Lebowski was the top-grossing movie from 9 theaters. Emails dispatched late last week turned into missives of grief. I've been reporting the grosses since we started using computers to get data, and while I can't remember the exact date, the year was 1988. Prior to that, we used to get the grosses by calling a central hum and writing them by hand, or actually calling the individual theaters to get the grosses, if you can imagine that, Loomis said in a March 19th note. Today, in these wild and crazy times, I don't think that there's any reason to continue reporting until we make it through to the other side and return to some kind of normalcy, or normalcy, I guess. I believe that we are resilient and that we will make it through, but it may take a little time. Or this, from Walt Disney Pictures on March 18th. Given the current large number of theater shutdowns around the globe, Disney will suspend global weekend reporting for the time being. Wishing you and your families the best during these testing times, and please be safe. In happier times, I was always relieved when the new movie of the weekend belonged to Disney. Most studios announce their North American grosses by 7:30 a.m. Disney doesn't generally send out their note until well after 8 a.m. Hallelujah. One more tap of the snooze button, since they include both domestic and global in the same memo. The rest of the studios issue their international numbers separately. Universal is generally quickest, with overseas grosses following domestic. For those of us covering box office, this separation between domestic and international means constantly updating the main story until 11 a.m. or later. In between, there are the calls to studio distribution executives in the hopes of gleaning a good quote and catching up on the most gossip. This past Sunday, calls went mostly unanswered. What was there to say other than to commiserate about whether current releases were being made available early on premium VOD did any business? The first wave of frenzy for box office junkies begins around noon on Friday, when studios begin privately estimating weekend grosses for the top 5 or 10 films. If you are lucky, sources will share this info. There are updates on Friday night, followed by Saturday morning stories on Friday grosses, and then the Sunday crush. And forget about having a break during major holidays. Try explaining to your family year after year why presents can't be opened until you finish your Christmas morning story, or why it's tough to travel over Thanksgiving. We are creatures of habit. When I went to bed on Sunday night, I stared at my iPhone. Lost. What time should I set my alarm for? I decided on 7 a.m. to preserve some sort of normalcy. For Loomis, it meant getting up at 5:30 a.m. instead of 4 a.m. It's weird to look at the grosses and see nothing, he told me on Sunday. For ComScore ambassador and box office analyst Paul DeGarabedian, it meant setting his alarm for 7:45 a.m. instead of 6:30 a.m. or so. He wanted to be prepared in case he received emails or phone calls from journalists. Mine was the first he received, and that was well past 10 a.m. Digesting numbers is baked into my DNA, so Sunday was a very strange feeling. I feel like a very lonely Maytag repairman. Garabedian adds, we are an ecosystem, and it represents more than the numbers going out, but a lot of hardworking people who are stuck in neutral, like so many other businesses. Sometimes we talk about what a bummer it is to have to wake up so early. Believe it or not, we will all be very excited to set the alarm for 6:30 on Sunday morning. All of us. I'll be happy to say I'm a morning person after all. Well, even though this article was dealing with the entertainment business, I thought it was a pretty good indicator of where a lot of people are right now, dealing with what they're dealing with. Today, Sophie, Elizabeth's daughter, Sophie, who's 16 years old, found out she was laid off from her job at the LA Zoo, which was one of her favorite things in the world. But because the zoo is closed, who knows what will happen in the future. She was told she can reapply at a later date, which seems kind of strange to me. But that's what people are going through, and I think the entertainment business is obviously not immune to any of it, considering the business of entertainment is to entertain the most amount of people possible. And of course, movies are one of those things that's sort of ingrained in our culture. But I have to tell you, I mean, it made me sad. Like when I was growing up, when I was a kid, I always used to wonder, like if there was a movie that came out, and I would try and see everything, all the major movies, even growing up, from the time I was like 10 years old, when I could ride, I was riding public transportation in Seattle at 10. And I always had this thing. It would always, I don't know. When the idea that movies would play, and I wasn't there, and obviously movies would play for, 4 or 5 times a day. And if I loved a movie, I used to always think about how at any one time when a movie would open, a big movie, that there were people seeing it for the first time. And I always wondered, what was their reaction? And it every day, even if I was in school, I remember being in school thinking about this, whether I was in elementary school or junior high or high school, I'm like, man, that movie's playing right now. It's playing again. I would hear the dialogue in my head and the music play, and I would think to myself, every single day it just keeps playing. The movie keeps playing and new people keep seeing it. And if I really love the movie, I always thought about all those other people that were seeing the movie for the first time, and did they like it as much as I liked it? And it seemed strange. And I still have that little, I still in a way, I carry this, okay, I'm going to give you some insight into me psychologically. So all of this stuff that I have in here, like all of these books, I look at these books and I think about what it was like when you read a book. In your mind, you get caught up in it. You get caught up with characters or comic omnibuses or whatever. You get caught up in the story, and it seems like it's happening. Like as you're reading it, anybody who's a big reader or loves comics or can find yourself transported, not just by movies but by any of this stuff. And then it's always kind of wigged me out that I put stuff back on the shelf and it just sits there. Because with movies, I always thought of other people, like a movie's going to be played. There's another show at 4:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Like I would only see movies on the weekends, but I'm like, on a Wednesday, somebody's there. That's why somebody's gone in the middle of the day. And I kind of feel bad that I have like all of this stuff that's just sitting there, because there's exciting stories and exciting characters and just great feats of daring do. And, I look at like that Kirby omnibus. It's right there. I mean, it was expensive and I've enjoyed it and I read it. And I feel that with all the wonders that are contained in the covers of every one of these books, or all the discs. I mean, I got some physical media right here, but all of the Blu-rays that I collect, if somebody's not experiencing them, the joys of all of this stuff, it seems like a waste. And I kind of feel bad. I look around and I think, I'm torn. Should I feel bad that I have this stuff? Like, by me hoarding it or me having it here, it's stopping somebody else from enjoying it. Like, it kills me to know. It kills me to know that there is a DCP, a digital cinema package, a file of the new James Bond movie somewhere. Somewhere it's just sitting there. The new James Bond movie is just sitting there, not being played. And as a lifelong James Bond fan, it kills me to know that there is a device somewhere on this planet that the new James Bond movie is sitting on. All you have to do is plug that shit into a theater. Take it to a theater, plug it into a projector, just download that DCP, get it on a server, and you can watch that movie. You can experience that, whatever the characters do, whatever James Bond does, Rami Malek's character, Léa Seydoux. I mean, it's all there, and you can't experience it. And it's funny because, like, all of these books, I look at all these books, and some of them I haven't even, like, I've got my copy of Stephen King's It. That actual copy of Stephen King's It, that's right there. It's mint condition. I mean, it's not a limited edition. It was the trade hardcover, but it's mint. That is the actual copy of It I read in 1986 when it came out. It's 34 years old now. I only read it once. I mean, carrying it around with me, house to house, apartment to apartment. There it is over there. And I feel like all of Stephen King's writing might have taken me a year to write that book. And it's sitting there not being read. You know, I see I have the cover facing out to me. And I love that cover. And every time I look at it, I think about, I read that book at a park on Mercer Island called Luther Burbank when I was pining over a girlfriend of mine that had gone away to Alaska for the summer. And she left when I was on a trip, so I never got to say goodbye to her. And there I was. I would sit there by myself, and that book gave me solace at the end of the summer. I sat there and read it. And I still have it, but I feel like somebody should be reading it. And all the movies that are in the theaters, I mean, now some of them are going to VOD. You know, you can see Invisible Man, you can see The Hunt, you can watch those things, and it just kills me that there's movies that we can't experience. And the idea that theaters, I've had so many fond memories of being in darkened rooms. And I think about just down the street, the ArcLight Pasadena, the Cinerama Dome, the Chinese Theater with its great IMAX laser projection system. Those rooms that are full of dreams are just empty. And nobody's experiencing anything in them. And I understand why. I get it. But it just, to feel like, to know that it ain't happening, man. It ain't happening. Freaks me out. And, you know, China says they're going to open their theaters, open like 500 theaters or something. And that's good to know. But I still, man, I feel, I don't know. There's something about the Dream Factory being shut down that kind of bums me out, man. But, you know, like I was said, the sun's up. Sunny day. It's probably going to rain again here in Pasadena later tonight. But, hey, it's a sunny day. I got a lot of stuff to experience. I'm finishing up a little video I'm going to put up later, a product review. And I'll tell you what the product review is for, because I was pretty impressed. It is for the JBL Bar 9.1 stereo surround soundbar with Dolby Atmos. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. And it hasn't hit the market yet. It is currently not available. I heard it was going to be available in April, but JBL reached out to me. Actually, Harman International reached out to me. The experiential engagement department of Harman International reached out to me and asked, knowing my love of home theater, if I would be interested in taking a look at their soundbar, their 9.1. They put out 5.1 soundbars, but this is a 9.1 soundbar with Dolby Atmos. And I was like, I want to know what is that like. So they sent it to me, and I busted it open, and I played with it this weekend, and I played The Matrix, the new 4K disc of The Matrix with Dolby Atmos, and I put it through its paces, and I did a little review. I will be dropping that video later, and hey, what can I tell you? It made me happy, and if you're in the market, I will say this, spoiler alert, I really liked it. I was surprised. I'm adamantly opposed to soundbars. This was an impressive piece of gear, gotta say. Also, on Deadline today, there was an article about Hollywood post-production, and I figured I'd share that with you as well because it directly affects me. And I guess they treated this, it seemed like something new to anybody. I'm like, this is nothing new, but I'm going to read this article anyway. Again, this was in Deadline today. It dropped at 12:34, an hour and a half ago. So it's fairly new. And this article says, post-production industry fears work will dry up during shutdown. Compared with other members of the below-the-line community affected by the coronavirus pandemic, see, I've never considered editors a below-the-line member of the community because, after all, we do get Academy Award nominations, and we are in the main titles of the film. So I know what you're saying. I get it. But still, compared with other members of the below-the-line community affected by the coronavirus pandemic and the production shutdowns it spurred, post-production artists are uniquely positioned. Relying mostly on computers and an internet connection to do their jobs, picture editors, sound editors, and colorists are able to work remotely, while many other artisans are not. Still, this reality is tempered by the fact that without any new material to edit, their work too will dry out. Tom Jarvis, the Emmy-nominated editor behind The Late Late Show with James Corden, has spoken with a number of his fellow craftsmen in recent days. I would say craftspeople, actually, if I wrote this, gaining a sense of how, that's a shout out to Rachel, part of course, the Shire Wolves, and she's a female editor I know. Tom Jarvis, the Emmy-nominated editor behind The Late Show with James Corden, has spoken with a number of his fellow craftspeople in recent days, gaining a sense of how the shutdowns have impacted them. There are quite a few who've been lucky and are able to load up on hard drives and media and work from home, or are on shows that are able to continue while working remotely. Several will be employed until August, he said, but there's also a large group of them who are now suspended or put out of work. It's really hard for freelancers to find gigs now, and depending on who it is, it's coming at unfortunate times. Johnny Byrne, a sound designer, sound editor, and re-recording mixer, whose credits include The Favorite and Waves, is in the same position at the moment as many of his peers. The founder of Wave Studios, a post-production house with branches in London, Amsterdam, and New York, Byrne still has a month or so of work on the books, but with little sense of what will come next. Looking to work on a feature, a TV series, Season 2 of HBO's Euphoria, and several smaller projects over the course of the next year, Byrne had all of those jobs taken from him abruptly when the production shutdowns hit. Personally, I'm praying and hoping it will be a short process to get back to business as usual, but realistically, I don't believe that it is, he said. I did think this could get messy, but wow, it's sort of gone beyond my imagination where we're already at. With his offices shut down, Byrne had to buy 10 new Mac laptops and a whole bunch of Sony top-flight headphones to allow his team to finish the task that remained. Around the same time, General Manager Dominic Rahm oversaw a much larger work-from-home transition for the team at Goldcrest Post. Located in New York City's meatpacking district, the Post House had a number of network episode shows in process when the COVID-19 crisis hit, as well as many projects for streaming services including Netflix, Apple, and Amazon. All of them have deadlines, and some of them were in the middle of production, so we weren't sure how it was going to affect all of them, Rahm said, but we know we needed to be able to continue to service them if something went wrong. Now, you get the idea there. Now, in a way, I do feel fortunate. As I've told you all, I am producing special features for the Hills Run Red Blu-ray that Shout Factory is supposedly, they've announced it was going to come out June 16th. I would assume so. We have to deliver the special features this week, and I'm sort of a one-man band on those special features. I shot them. I'm now editing them. I am mixing them in 5.1. I'm giving them a stereo surround mix, which is something you don't normally do with special features, but why not? and I'm producing about 2.5 hours of material. Since I'm my own producer, my own editor, my own sound mixer, and my own director, I've been having a good time doing that, so I feel fortunate. But once that's done, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I guess I'll cut another trailer for Tango Shalom and hopefully get that movie sold, because now is the perfect time to do that. But it's been a very, very strange time. I mean, our industry, it was like, one of those anvils from a Warner Brothers cartoon just like dropped on Wile E. Coyote's head as he chased the Roadrunner. I mean, it's been crazy. Almost a complete work stoppage. And it's strange. But one of the great things about Post over the last couple of years, with Tango Shalom, I edited Tango Shalom on my own equipment in 4 different locations. And in a house in Beverly Hills was one of them that doesn't even exist anymore, since I was the last person to live in that house while I was editing. And it was sold and subsequently demolished. It was Shirley Temple's old house, and I believe it was built in the 40s. Gone now. Swept away. Not by the empire, but by a real estate developer. And one of the great things about Post is, I mean, I could literally, if I wanted to, I could literally finish an entire film from where I'm sitting. I could color time it. I could edit it. I could mix it. I could do everything. I could even do visual effects if I knew how to do them, or hire people that did and have them do them, like my friend Darren Doctorman, who did visual effects on Tango Shalom. I would send him stuff. He would do the effects remotely, send them back to me. I'd give him notes. He'd do the implementation of the notes, and then send me the final shots. And then I put them in the film. And I never really left. And that's what post-production is. It's kind of fun. I mean, it's good, but when you don't have anybody making shows, there's nothing to cut. There's no post. And it's kind of a bummer. But what can you do? That's just the way the things are. And we live through strange times. But I want to just touch on my fellow friends in Post and to just ruminate a little bit about the dreams that are not unfurling on our nation's screens. And it's strange. I have a lot of letters today, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to regale you with them and the comments that you are sending in. And Lubna had written in yesterday about the writings on the wall, the Sam Smith themed Spectre, which is not a favorite of mine, but Lubna wanted to clarify and says, I'm sorry, but I quite forgot. This is just a little clarification regarding my first letter, the link to the Performance to Writings on the Wall cover. When I said I was biased, I meant that I'm a figure skating fan in general and a Bokova Kozlovsky fan in general, and and that performance to the song might make me enjoy it even more. Trust me, you do not want to hear me sing. Oh, I didn't know. I thought you might have been sending me a cover of your own work, but hey, if it's not, that's okay too. So yeah, why not? And I'm glad maybe it wasn't yours, but you never know. So we shall see. But thanks for sending that in. I appreciate the letter. This next letter comes from Amir B. Amir B is ongoing. He's been writing letters in, and I appreciate his letters. And here's another one. Amir B says, how PC culture, power, and analytics are changing our beloved IPs. Hi, Rob. Over the past several years, there has been an exponential increase in the backlash against studios and producers for handling many of our beloved IPs. From Star Wars and Ghostbusters to Star Trek and Doctor Who, it seems any time a studio is attempting to reshape an old IP, it is met with intense backlash by many traditional fans. While many things are to blame on an individual case, I think there are 3 general factors causing these circumstances. I want to start with an example. I work in academia, where researchers and tenured professors compete to publish in top journals. From the outside, it may look that hard work will get you closer to publication, but the reality is that a great idea is only half the battle. The other half is knowing people in the right places, speaking strictly about my field. In fact, the latter plays a more critical role in many cases. In my area, academics won't admit this, but the reality is 60 to 80% of publications are run by a group of influential researchers in well-known universities where they don't let most people in their club. Again, strictly speaking about my field. They find any excuse to reject your paper. It's technically a mafia, but a politically correct one. If you bring this up, they hear you, but they don't listen to you. Why don't these criticisms stand? Well, because A, the guys at the top don't consider anyone qualified enough to do it, due to lack of top publications, and B, they are operating with unchecked power. The best part is that most of these top guys research by ripping off their graduate students. They either steal their ideas or dump the workload on them. You see the loop here? Now why I'm going on this tangent? I'm not sure how the power dynamic works in Hollywood, but I think it is similar to my experience in my field. A group of people, through whatever means, get to power, and they make sure to bring people like them to the top. Look no further than J.J. Abrams. He has to be the most overrated director I've seen in my life. Aside from the fact that he doesn't care, he's just not that creative. He rips off old movies and calls them homages, yet he still gets to bulldoze through other IPs with the help of his friends, including Mr. Alex Kurtzman. He makes other people do most of the work on his project, yet he gets all the credit. Take Lost as an example. He was the first creator of the show. How much involvement he had? Practically zero. I think he directed the pilot, though, didn't he? It was the first it ended pretty much after the first 2 episodes. I'm sure there are others, but when a mafia of such people is formed where power trumps creativity and not caring is part of the DNA, you effectively shut out many other ideas and people. However, this factor alone is not fatal. Next on my list is the PC culture. In season 4 of South Park, Cartman had a nightmare that hippies had taken over the world. Almost 15 years later, this is becoming a reality. The PC culture, which started developing many years ago in college, is now heavily influencing how our entertainment is being produced. The motto of this work is, PC movement is inclusion, respect, and equality for all. In reality, however, the situation is different. Inclusion is really about forcing whatever ideology they have in their creation. Equality of opportunity is really equality of outcome, and respect is really about them not having their feelings hurt. Once these 3 pillars replace the merit of an individual and a soundness of the story, you get the dumb shows we have today. Not only that, opposite voices get silenced and regardless of their legitimacy, get labeled as racist, misogynistic, anti-LGBT, you name it. Finally, there is analytics. Hollywood hires many people from Ivy League business schools, as you often mention. And you know what they all have in common? They trust analytics more than anything, and they don't care about the final product. I studied business, and I've seen this firsthand. Screw passion, merit, or creativity, bring on the spreadsheet. That was our motto in school. Show me a predictive model so I can make a decision. A common phrase I commonly have heard most of my life. In a way, I can't blame them. After all, movies are businesses, and the ultimate goal is making money. But I wish there was a way we could use some of the non-numeric criteria in these predictive models, such as passion or creativity. While each of these factors alone may not cause catastrophic damage, but put them together and you get a poison pill. By having people who don't care, both behind the camera and in the studio, you effectively create a mob which its only objective is holding on to the power. Consequently, more creative voices will lose a chance to get their hands on an IP, shutting out other creators. Add analytics to the mix, and effectively story logic gets pushed out, even though it's the pillar of any movie or TV show. Nowadays, it's rare that a passionate person who actually cares about the product holds all the power, but when it does, it produces something unique. 2 instances that come to mind are South Park and the MCU. I would add to that Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Trey Parker and Matt Stone grew South Park from throwaway TV show on Comedy Central to one of the longest-running TV shows of all time, to a franchise with games and movies that to this day has legions of fans. Regardless of how one feels about the show, no one can deny the fact that it has been unique, pushed boundaries, and produced many memorable moments. The same thing can be said about the MCU and Kevin Feige. I do hope one day this equation changes and we see more instances such as the MCU or South Park for other beloved franchises, but maybe it is our hope in seeing a change that has blindsided us from the fact that maybe these factors are here to stay and won't be going away anytime soon. Thanks, Rob. Best Amir. Well, Amir, I would say a fantastic letter. Not that I would say, I am saying a fantastic letter, and thank you for writing in. Now, first of all, I want to say something that, and many people might find it surprising coming from me. There's nobody that's working in Hollywood, nobody that's directing, nobody that's writing, nobody that's producing movies that doesn't care. Nobody. Whether it's J.J. Abrams or whether it's Rian Johnson, I can assure you that everyone is doing and trying to do their very best work. They really are. Movie making is not the place where you can half-ass it. You just can't. However, what happens, because of what Amir pointed out, because of spreadsheets and things like that, there are only a certain amount of people that are even qualified, at least from a studio perspective, to engage in this material, to engage in this business. When you're spending 150 or 200 or 250 million or even $300 million making a movie that doesn't even include marketing, there is a very small, a very short list that any company could ever even get the money to make a movie unless a person that's on that very short list is involved. And that person doesn't get on that list because they know somebody or because they went to an Ivy League school. They've done enough behind them that it shows that the risk, if you believe in them or you back them, your risk is mitigated. If you're a studio, you're a creative executive, whoever it is that you're going to hire, you need to be able to be confident that they're going to be able to spend your $150 or $200 million effectively. And on the planet Earth, amongst the billions and billions of people, there's only a handful, probably less than 20. Really, I swear to God, less than 20 that a studio can trust with their money and their IP. Now, obviously, you and I know, you people being out there watching me now, absolutely know that there are a lot of creative people that never get a shot at doing this, which is true. Even people have said to me, Rob, you should be running Star Trek. I can't run Star Trek. I have no track record in television. Zero. People are always saying, you're just bitter at the creators of Star Trek. CBS won't work with you or whatever. I'm like, look, man, I've never worked in television other than directing 5 episodes of a late-night Cinemax show. Indeed, HBO had to approve me as a director, but that is my experience. And these episodes were shot over 3 days. We had to shoot 30 pages over 3 days. The fact that we even got them done, and I'm proud. There's of the 5 episodes, I think I brought in 3 on time and on budget. The 2 others, one they expanded into a 2-parter, and one there was a situation completely beyond my control that has nothing to do with me. But that's my experience in TV. I mean, look, I'm not a TV writer. I've never worked in a TV writer's room, so I think I could be good in a writer's room. I do. I think I could absolutely. I spent 10 years basically on and off giant franchise movie sets, whether it was Lord of the Rings, X-Men, Superman Returns, Chronicles of Narnia. I watched these things. I mean, I had an education like most people don't have. To be able to wander around with a video camera and talk to anybody on a $200 million movie set, to wander into the producer's office whenever I wanted to, as long as they weren't busy, and ask questions and shoot the shit and talk, then go into the edit bay and talk to the editor, then hang out on set with the director and watch what he was doing for a year at a time. I had an education like very few people have been afforded. So I would say that yes, I have a certain amount of insight and a certain amount of knowledge that I have yet to be able to exercise in a way where I could actually show. Like if somebody came to me and they said, okay, Rob, put your money where your mouth is. Here's $200 million. Go produce a studio feature film. I would say, okay, I could do it. I could absolutely do it. I mean, I spent 10 years on large-scale studio movies watching them get made. and then covering how they got made from the very beginning to the very end. Or at least I would be able to know who I would hire to get those things finished. So yes, I probably would be able to do those things. But as far as the industry is concerned, on those spreadsheets, I haven't done shit. I directed one movie 20 years ago. That's all anybody mattered. That's all anybody would care about. And it didn't get proper P&A. And according to the numbers, it made $30,000 theatrically in 9 theaters over a weekend. There's nothing on a spreadsheet that would convince anybody that I should have any knowledge about anything. I mean, yes, I've gone on to produce other things, but that's all that matters. Nobody takes into consideration the time I spent documenting movies, and that's true of the business. I mean, you until you've earned your way into the business and proven yourself, nobody is going to. The one thing about an Ivy League school, the reason they hire Ivy League educated business executives is because they got degrees at Ivy League schools. It took a lot to get into an Ivy League school. It took a lot to stay at an Ivy League school, and to get a master's degree at an Ivy League school. That in itself is impressive. That shows a Fortune 500 company that if you had the wherewithal to not only get into an Ivy League school, but stick it out and get a master's degree, it's a pretty good bet. That's why they get hired. That's why, from a spreadsheet's perspective, it's like, okay, we got to hire this person. And I don't blame them. That's exactly the kind of person that they should be hiring. So the real question is, and what we don't really understand is, why are people that don't necessarily have a love of whatever franchise they're hired for, why are they getting hired to do those franchises? Well, look, man, nobody in the entertainment business is going to say no to a job. If J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot is contacted and they've got a chance, I mean, J.J. Abrams had made Mission Impossible with Paramount. They had a good experience. Tom Cruise probably had a good experience. Bad Robot is still one of the production companies on the Mission Impossible movies. So J.J. Abrams, he makes a Mission Impossible film. And it does well. And the studio really likes dealing with him. And they're like, okay, well, we want to bring back Star Trek. Bad Robot sees Star Trek as a huge opportunity, because Star Trek is both it is flourished as both a film franchise and obviously as a television franchise. And there was a time in the 90s when there's not one but 2 Star Trek shows running concurrently. So Bad Robot sees an opportunity like, oh my God, we can make movies and television from this franchise at the same time. And there's all kinds of merchandising possibilities. Why would Bad Robot say no to that? J.J. Abrams is like, this is one of the most lucrative opportunities that has ever been presented to my company. I am absolutely going to jump on this. And rightfully so. I mean, why wouldn't you? From a business perspective, you take that opportunity. And of course, JJ, it's his company, so he jumps on board and gets to direct Star Trek movies. Unfortunately, I think, and he hires at the time Robert Orci, Bob Orci, and of course Alex Kurtzman. They've worked together. They've got credits as well. They know each other. Let's hire them. Bob Orci's a huge Star Trek fan. Let's see what we can do. And that's how these deals get made. What we want from people is we want people to understand these properties the way we understand these properties as fans. But the reality of how the motion picture business works is that's hardly ever going to happen, because people that work in the motion picture business, unless they had become fans, they don't have time to become the fans that we are. And I can't believe I'm defending people. But, I mean, I am not a fan of J.J. Abrams. And I do think that through all of his movies, he hasn't proved there are... I'm not a fan of his direction. I'm not a fan of his storytelling, and I'm certainly not a fan of his screenwriting. But from a business perspective, I do admire the hell out of the guy. I mean, he grew up around the business. He was like cataloging Steven Spielberg's movies at 16 or something like that. So he's well liked. And I can't not admire anybody that's built the kind of company Bad Robot has become in terms of supplying television. And there's a lot of properties things that he's made that I liked. I was a big fan of Lost until the final season. So I can't fault J.J. Abrams. I just think, unfortunately, I don't think he has the chops to make the kind of movies that he was tasked to make. And he's made 4 two Star Trek movies and two Star Wars movies, two of my favorite things in the world, favorite franchises, and in my mind, he wasn't up to the task. I wish he had more time to hone his craft, but he from the Mission Impossible, he's making these big movies. He never had a time to really grow. But that's, the PC thing is a big problem, I think. Putting an agenda, the fact that there's comic book characters named Snowflake and Safe Space, to me, that was like, that's peak, I don't know what you call it, but my God, Superman stands for truth, justice, and the American way. But having a superhero that's going to be named something like that, I mean, Superman's a little bit more generic, but these are things that should never have been allowed to happen. And in academia, I think it's so strange to me that the one place where you should be intellectually challenged, where you should have to confront ideas that you find troublesome to you personally, that's the one place where you should be able to explore. And the fact that academia is now full of PC culture and virtue signaling and safe spaces and all this is just, why go to college? Why go to college if you want to be safe? The whole point of college is to prepare you for the real world. But I feel your pain. I'm kind of going off. I want to thank you for the letter, Amir. I thought that letter was pretty great. This next letter comes from Gabriel Ellis. Hey, Rob, I very much enjoy your show and how you approach the diversity of topics in detail with your personal touch and your vast experience. Why? Well, thank you, Gabriel. I appreciate that. Just wanted to send some words of solidarity to California. And I also started to rewatch Shogun after yesterday's recommendation. I don't think I've watched it since it aired on German TV in 1986, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Also, because I'm a fan of Kurosawa only as an adult, and it's great to see and recognize Toshiro Mifune in his role. I love it. Chamberlain comes off as gawky, but he perfectly fits into the 80s and his role. Best wishes to you and Elizabeth from Warsaw and Poland. Well, thank you there. It's good to hear from Warsaw and Poland. I love our international audience. It's so great to have that. And here comes, to follow that up, another letter from Lubna. Says, hello, Lubna Khan says, hello. The other day on your Robservations, you were discussing cynicism and hope, and you remarked that each day the sun always rises. It made me think of an old Indian film song. I've been pondering since, doubting whether to share this or not, but like Oscar Wilde, I can resist anything but temptation, so here clearly I am. My main reason for hesitating is that I do not consider myself a good translator, and I do not know how this song may translate figuratively as well as literally or culturally. Still, I thought I should give it a try. I also say that the scene is of someone about to commit suicide, just to explain some of the initial lyrics. Otherwise, I think the song has great, what Tolkien called, applicability, and the exact circumstances in the film don't really matter. I haven't even seen it. Here are the lyrics. I'll just read them. Death you can have at any time, but life you will not get back tomorrow. You who are about to die, think carefully, for this moment will not be given back to you again. Darkness is a guest for the night who could prevent morning from coming. The darker the night is, the more colorful the morning will be. Do not grieve if the clouds are thick, who could prevent morning from coming. Darkness is a guest for the night. Do not bring complaint to your lips, swallow your tears. In whatever way you can, just live a little longer. The settlement of sorrow is about to be uprooted. Who could prevent morning from coming? Darkness is a guest for the night. Come, let us think of some solution together. Let's envision some dream of happiness. The grief that is yours, the same grief is also mine. Who could prevent morning from coming? Darkness is a guest for the night. Pardon any possible mistranslations. As for cynicism, I love Oscar Wilde's definition of a cynic as someone who, quote, knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. I could ramble on, I'm prone to rambling, about the shards of the mirror in H.C. Andersen's Snow Queen. That would be Hans Christian Andersen's Snow Queen. But I shall restrain myself and not just ramble on. No end in sight. Another time, perhaps. Lubna. What a great letter. What great lyrics, too. How cool is that? Yeah. Well, so thank you for that. I'm telling you, man, I really enjoy the letters that people send in. You guys never cease to amaze me, and it's actually, it's been quite sort of uplifting to get these letters. It keeps me going. I hope it keeps you guys going when I'm sharing these. Wow, these letters are duplicating. I'm trying to find ones that aren't. Here comes a letter from Jay Smock. Rob, longtime listener, and John Schnepp appreciator. Well, I thank you very much for that, Jay Smock. This is a YouTube link to a rather in-depth scientific Bond movie countdown amongst 5 true fanatics. It's in 2 parts. Well, I've not watched this, so I cannot vouch for how good this is. But since it's about Bond movies, I will put it in the live chat. So everybody, you can find out, or you can see. Here's part 1 of the Bond scientific discussion. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds like something I would like to experience. Now, by the way, if you're punking me because I haven't linked on this and it's actual, pornography or something crazy, I'm going to blame some of you people in this room, and you might get struck by lightning. But anyway, there you go. Thank you, Jay, for writing in. I love any Bond fan is a friend of mine. So, hey, how cool is that? Why don't I jump over here and see? I know everybody's got some... there's been super chats and things flying in, so let me jump over there and see where we are at with all of you lovely folks. There's a couple of things like Alex M. sent in a tip and said, one of 2, in the Next Generation episode, The Defector, Admiral Jarok meets Data and says, "You're the android. I know a host of Romulan cyberneticists that would love to be this close to you." Meanwhile, on Picard, Laris to Picard, we don't have androids or AI. We don't study cybernetics. Notice this with Major Grin. He is a YouTuber who I like, who has been showing the utter failure of Star Trek Picard to adhere to Trek canon, who has some fun YouTube videos comparing the scenes with Picard and Discovery. Well, Alex M., you're absolutely right. I love Major Grin. Yeah, it's been really disheartening to watch how little Star Trek Picard seems to fit in with the rest of Next Generation. If nothing else, if for no other Star Trek, how about just Next Gen? I mean, I know you really should watch Voyager as well, but just Next Gen. And there's been so many contradictory things, and it has been, in fact, frustrating, which I feel you. And Major Grin's videos I quite enjoy. Royce Freeman sent in a super chat and says, "Which version do you like better? Superman theatrical or the extended cut with extra Brando? And which Superman 2, Lester or Donner cuts, and why?" There is... I guess the Blu-ray or maybe the DVD cut is kind of my favorite, where it's sort of an amalgamation cut. It's like the motion picture director's cut for Superman the movie. The TV version's got too much in it, like the Luther's Dragons or whatever. That's too much. So I kind of like the definitive version that they put out on video. I don't know which version of it is, but that's my favorite version of Superman. I have to say, The Lester version, while I appreciate it tonally, and I like the fact that Jor-El is in it, I still might prefer the Lester cut because the Donner cut is just, it remains unfinished. And I think, whereas the Lester cut, they went and finished the film. And I do miss, in the Donner cut, Superman saying, "General, would you care to step outside? Come to me, Superman, kneel before Zod." But... and maybe that's... And I like the Donner cut. I really do. But it wasn't ever properly finished. So I've got to always go with the Lester cut. Although I do like a lot of what's in the Donner version of Superman 2 better. Willow sends in a tip and says, "How often do you leave the house these days? My parents don't even want me to buy groceries for them right now because they're afraid I'll infect them." Well, that's... You might, as you well know. I have left the house once, I think in like 8 days, actually maybe twice, and that has only been to go to the grocery store I've been out of the house. We've gone to the grocery store, and I went to the pet food store to get food for the dogs. And that's it. I've been here the whole time. I haven't gone anywhere. What I would give to go to Lucky Baldwin's and have a nice IPA in a goblet along with a double Jameson and to have their fish and chips right down the street. Alas, that is not to be. I am planning, however, the Pasadena Pizza Kitchen, which I desperately love. See, I'm touching my face. But I haven't been out. So, as you know, and I just washed my hands before I went on this show. So, there you go. I want to go to the Pasadena Pizza Kitchen and have one of their Meat Lovers pizzas. They're right down the street, so you can pick stuff up there. And I might just do that later today. Who knows? But yes, I don't mind because I got so much to do. I got so much work to do that if I'm not working, I watch movies with Elizabeth, and I'm excited that we're talking about Betty Blue tonight, or I'm in here working. That's all I can do. And Elizabeth actually is starting classes at Arts Center remotely, so she'll be doing work, which is good. So there's going to be a lot going on all up here in this hizzle, as there usually is. Willow continues on and says, I was taking a walk yesterday and I saw the bus drivers before. Do not board from near doors. This bus is front boarding only. Bus drivers now, board only from the rear doors. I don't want to get infected by your germs. Well, I think everybody, look, the rates of infection, people are talking about more than 50% of the population. I understand. It's everywhere. And even if you never get infected or you're asymptomatic or whatever, you might be a carrier, you might be an incubator. I think maybe in a way this is kind of a wake-up call. Hopefully people will think twice. Whenever we have things like this happen, it's always, we're seeing, luckily we didn't have the kind of fatality rates that we could have had. And other countries like South Korea, their response has been quite if you want, look no further than how South Korea responded to this and what they were able to do. And I believe I read that South Korea and the United States had coronavirus cases at the same time, the same day, diagnosed the same day. But it's interesting. This too will pass, and hopefully we will learn from it and move forward. Jim Boyer sent in a super chat and says, regale us, oh velvety voice of the virus vacation. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Willow. She was a princess. I don't know. I don't know what I can say. I need material. If I'm going to read something, maybe I should just do a whole show with this voice. Not really ASMR, but I don't know, man. I think it might get taxing doing this voice. In a world where one man, I don't know. I got nothing. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, it's a quarter of a century since 1995. Can you believe it? People talk of years which had great movies. 95 gets lost in the shuffle. The movies released in 95 equals or exceeds any year. Check out this list. Well, Stubble, why don't we check out this list? And I am going to put your list in the live chat because it's my live chat and I can do that. Here's the list that Stubble McShave says. But since you're bringing up 95 and now my interest is piqued, I can use this newfangled technology called the internet and find out. Let's see, ladies and gentlemen, movies of 1995. I can think of a few actually right off the top. I'm just going to rattle through these. Wow. Okay, here we go. Outbreak. 95. So, wow, this is quite the year, Stubble. Apollo 13. Heat, 7, Braveheart, Jumanji, Batman Forever, Hackers, The Usual Suspects, Sense and Sensibility, Before Sunrise, Casper, Toy Story, Babe, Waterworld, The Brady Bunch movie, 12 Monkeys, Judge Dredd with Stallone, Clueless, Bad Boys, The Bridges of Madison County, Billy Madison, Tommy Boy, Showgirls, Congo, Mortal Kombat, Sam Raimi's The Quick and the Dead, Leaving Las Vegas, Crimson Tide, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Dolores Claiborne, Empire Records, Get Shorty, GoldenEye, I'll say the net, but that's not impressive, Assassins, Wild Bill, Kicking and Screaming to Die For, Mallrats, Desperado, Johnny Mnemonic, Ghost in the Shell, the animated version, Tank Girl, and First Night. What a list, Stubble. Man, you weren't kidding, dude. That is quite the list, I have to say. That is quite the list. Wow. Madouine sends a super chat and says, welcome to the Robservatory. Please state the nature of your verisimilitude emergency. A friend recommended I watch Miracle Mile. Can't wait to watch. Well, Miracle Mile was directed by Steve DeJarnett, who also directed Cherry 2000. I hope you're going into Miracle Mile cold. Miracle Mile, I saw Miracle Mile at the Seattle International Film Festival, and I knew nothing about it. I think it was part of the Secret Festival. I just revealed something. The ghost of Dan Ireland's coming after me, yo. And R.I.P. Dan Ireland, by the way, and R.I.P. the Seattle Film Festival, at least this year. Miracle Mile is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, but the less you know about it, the more fun it is. Mara Winningham, Anthony Edwards, Denise Crosby, Tasha Yar herself. So check it out. Steve DeJarnett is a graduate, or at least he went to, the Evergreen State College, where I went to college, and he directed an X-Files episode. Actually, maybe two. He directed an X-Files episode with an elephant in it, believe it or not. Anyway, report back. I have 2 copies of Miracle Mile on Blu-ray. Mad Mountain Gherkin 23 sent, when theaters open back up, what determines what will be in the theater? Will there be a lot of empty screens due to not having previous week's movies? I honestly don't know, man. I don't know what they're going to do because they have to advertise that movies are there. They can open movie theaters and hopefully they'll coordinate the theaters. The studios and the theaters should coordinate some kind of a grand opening and make it a grand old thing. But people are going to have to believe that they can go see the movies and not spread the virus. It's not just opening the theaters. It's the audience that has to know that they're safe and they can go. And I think they could turn it into some kind of an event. I would imagine that both the studios and the theater chains are planning for just such an eventuality. Maybe, hell, look, nobody asked me, but if they did, maybe start have a I don't know, a week's worth of free classic movies, because movie theaters mostly make money from their concessions anyway, but open up, have the studios subsidize a week's worth of classic movies and show, like Lord of the Rings, the extended versions for a day, the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy for a day, the Star Wars movies for a day. Who knows? But open up movie theaters, coordinate with the studios, and turn it into a family event where there is no box office fee. Anybody can go in. I mean, you still have to, obviously, you want to let good people in. You don't want people harassing. You have to let moviegoers who want to be there, obviously. I don't know how you'd police that. But then at these movies, you show trailers for all the movies that would open for that week. And I don't know, something like that. I don't know what it would do, but I think it'd be pretty cool. Wow, John Doe sends in a super chat, and also before I get to John Doe's letter, because wow, that's amazing super chat. You've got to figure out a way to get people excited about movies again, and you have to be able to market the movies. So I would say, one, you've got to market the fact that theaters are open for business, and then you have to market what movies are going to be playing at the theaters, and I think that's a big deal, definitely a big deal. I don't know how to do that, but I think it's definitely a big deal. John Doe sends in a super chat and says, Bleeding Cool reports Diamond Distribution, which is, of course, Diamond distributes to all the direct sale. They distribute to all the comic book stores, not just comic books, but everything: toys, model kits, action figures, anything in that very thick phone book-esque Diamond catalog. John Doe says, Bleeding Cool reports Diamond Distribution accepting no new deliveries for distribution of toys, games, books, comics, all shut down. So that means no pre-orders for the week's books or whatever. I don't know how far out they are. Well, another blow, I would say, to the direct sale market, which is too bad, because where do people house all that merchandise they're getting? Where's all the merch sitting in warehouses? Again, there's a ripple effect throughout the industry. What about all the people that deliver that stuff, that take it from Diamond's warehouses to the actual distribution points? Our economy is basically shutting down. I'll tell you something. One of the things that I was watching this morning before I got out of bed to do John Campia's show was I was watching Governor Cuomo from New York, and he was actually saying something I thought was very much worth hearing, that not only do you have to figure out a way to stop the spread of the virus, but you also have to figure out a way, how can we start our economy? And he was talking about things like, look, if we could test 50,000 people a day in each state or whatever, you could find people that don't have the disease, young people especially, and put people back to work and get the economy going. And he made a good point. You can't just allow the markets are tanking, our economy is going away. People have to work. They have to work. And in addition to stopping the spread of the virus, we have to figure out a way to get our economy working again, because everyone's out of work. And I'm just reporting on movies and anything imagination connoisseurs you people out there like. And we got to think about both of those things. And it's unfortunate. But what else are they going to do? I understand comic book stores aren't open. People aren't going. But, some people like Golden Apple here in Los Angeles are trying to they have a comic hop, like an old car hop at the drive-in. You can order your stuff. I noticed that at Best Buy, you can buy things online, and then people will bring it out to you if you show up there. There's people that were trying to weather the storm. But if Diamond is not going to be delivering even new comics, what are comic book stores to do? I feel like I should get out on one way I could get rid of my comics is to, I guess, if you can't go to your comic book store, I feel like giving away comics just to make people feel better, and go in and be like, here's Batman and the Outsiders 1 through 30. If you'd like this, come by with a donation in an envelope or something, and I'll have gloves on and hand you your comics. I don't know. I feel like do something like that, or maybe just put them all out on my front lawn and say, here, these comic book boxes are 10 feet apart each, and you can take what you want. Seems strange. Journey's End sends in a super chat and says, with so many productions on hold, is this an opportunity for filmmakers to film ultra low budget films while quarantined and sell to streaming? Well, Journey's End, that's a nice idea, but I'll tell you, streaming still, ultra low budget movies, you still have to have the talent, and you also have to have a crew. You really need good. I like the idea. I do like the idea, but again, to sell to streaming people, they still are looking at. There's a lot of crap on streaming, no doubt, but there's still a certain polished sheen to it all, and maybe. Who knows? Maybe you could do that. I look at movies like The Endless. Maybe you could do something like that. Chuck Philpott sends in a super chat and says, you hit the nail on the head about books. The first time I read Fahrenheit 451, I couldn't put the book down. I know, right? Still a great book, man. With one of those opening lines, it was a pleasure to burn. You can't forget that. One of the great lines in any book ever, right? You're absolutely right. Chris Cocking sends in a super chat and says, pick a random book behind you and tell us about it. Okay. Ooh, I'll pick one. I got one. Okay. Bret Easton Ellis. Wait, let me get on this. Here's Bret Easton Ellis's Glamorama. And by the way, you can see I don't have a Brodart on this book, but this book is in great shape. I like all my books to be in mint condition. Now, I do not know off the top of my head exactly what date this book was published. Wow, is it that late? 1998. Well, this was published in 1998. This might be my favorite Bret Easton Ellis book. And basically, it's about fashion. It's fashion models, male and female fashion models that also work as spies and assassins and things like that. And it is a great book. New York club impresario, cool guy, becomes caught up in this crazy clandestine world of fashion models and international terrorism. And for the life of me, I heard Roger Avery had, and now, by the way, that idea has been mined in other places. But wow, this book's 22 years old. I love this book, and I cannot believe it hasn't been turned into a movie. And it is part of the Ellis verse. There are characters that recur in Less Than Zero and whatchamacallit. Why am I drawing a blank? Rules of Attraction and Glamorama, the Ellis verse. And I've always wanted to see this, but I heard Roger Avery, who came up with some of the stories in Pulp Fiction with Quentin Tarantino, had the rights to this book and was going to make this. Obviously, he made Rules of Attraction, but he never got around to making this book. So I would love to see this book get made. I also have to say, if I remember correctly, I'll flat out admit, I like reading erotica. Reading it. This scene has like a bisexual three-way sex scene, like in a shower. If I remember, if memory serves, that was one of the hottest sex scenes that I've ever read in my life. That's something random about Glamorama that I can tell you. So Chris, there you go. I don't know if this is exactly what you wanted me to talk about, but when I turn around, this is the first thing that caught my eye. What a funny thing to do, though. I like that. What I should do is do some research about this and talk about this. And I was going to do these Robservatory off the shelf from the Robservatory and like pick one thing and do like a 10-minute riff on it. But yeah. And this book came out after American Psycho. So I really like this book. What a cool cover. Look at this cover, by the way. Hang on a second. This is neat. Look at this. Like all these people. It's kind of a dope die-cut cover. I have to say, I'm a big Bret Easton Ellis fan. I have been since I read Less Than Zero multiple times over a weekend when it first came out. Of course, the movie let me down. But there you go. So that's kind of funny. I like that. Mark Chure sends in a super chat and says, I get how unknowledgeable people wind up in charge. What I don't understand is why these people stay in power until after the backlash and low ratings. Well, part of it is because they are on that spreadsheet. They're part of the club. Once you're in the club, you're in the club. But you're absolutely right. And remember, when a TV show is being made, it can be pretty far along before it gets aired and you get to see the results of that. And a lot of people just don't know what works and what doesn't. And when ratings go down, it's not always apparent why the ratings have gone down. It's a little hard to say. Our man Sean Pullen sends in a super chat and says, could you tell us what you know about Mark Bernardin and his new and this new showrunner and what it is about them that gives you a modicum of hope for season 2? Okay, yes. Hang on. I got to get his, let's see. I got to get his name right. Besides Mark Bernardin. 2. Yes. Now, I want to make sure. Terry Matalas is the name of the season 2 Picard showrunner. Terry Matalas worked for Brannon Braga on Star Trek. And he knows, not that a lot of people are like, wait a minute, that's what you're basing it on? But I know a lot of people that know him. I don't know Terry Matalas. Maybe I've met Terry Matalas, but I don't know him. Or her. Is it her? I don't even know. But the reason that Terry Matalas has been, why Terry Matalas excites me is because of 12 Monkeys. The 12 Monkeys TV series. I thought the 12 Monkey TV series was pretty great. And he also worked on Nikita and Terra Nova. Maybe not so great. But he also worked on a little bit of Voyager. So he does have, he understands. He was a production associate on 98 episodes of Enterprise. And I'm hoping, I've heard nothing but good things about Terry Matalas. And he does have a Star Trek background. And I'm hoping that he will bring something of value to Star Trek. And I think having Mark Bernardin, these are both veteran television people. And Terry Matalas hopefully will bring a little bit of magic back to the, he was a story editor on the Nikita show, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. But at least somebody that's familiar with Star Trek, we shall see. Who knows? And he's also got, he's on the new MacGyver show. He was a consulting producer on Night Flyers, which is, unfortunately, that wasn't the greatest show in the world. But, yeah, I mean, gives me hope. New blood, we'll see. But that's the thing. And I'm sure he had a hand in hiring Mark Bernardin. And Mark Bernardin, I know, having heard that, and I hope that he will continue to hopefully hire another cast of writers that will turn out to bring the franchise back to its roots. So that's kind of where I'm at. Dancing Dog sends in a tip and says, Robert, there's a hidden gem of a movie called I Want to Hold Your Hand. I love I Want to Hold Your Hand. I saw I Want to Hold Your Hand in the theater. It's Robert Zemeckis' I believe it is. It's his first theatrical film. It stars Nancy Allen and Mark McClure. It's a charming road trip film about New Jersey kids going to see the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. Yes, I saw that movie when it first came out. I want to say like 1978 or something. I really liked I Want to Hold Your Hand, and it's a delightful movie. And you can see even there that Zemeckis' early films are pretty great. I Want to Hold Your Hand, stuff like Used Cars, and he wrote, of course, one of the writers on 1941. So yeah. Also, Robert, has any fan ever recreated the Next Generation bridge? I know fans have done the original series bridge. I don't know if anyone's done an entire Next Generation bridge. I've seen set pieces built, but the entire bridge, the only time I saw it was when I was working on the Star Trek Experience. They created it twice, and it was pretty amazing being on that bridge. It was really amazing. They got the lighting down, and I loved doing that. I loved even when they were building it. But I don't know if any fan productions has built an entire Next Generation bridge. I'm not sure about that. Bob Kowal says, your thoughts on Sid Field's screenplay? As a script reader, did you ever notice a trend of Fieldisms? Oh, look, Sid Field's writing How Do You Write Screenplays, and then later on, Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. But Sid Field's screenplay book, are you kidding? I mean, it was a holy tome. A lot of people followed what he said, and his story lecture series was huge. So yeah, I mean, look, Sid Field's system works. It does work. It doesn't make your content great just because you followed his system, though. You still have to know how to write, and obviously that's a good template. I think one of the real problems when I was reading scripts, what I'll tell you the problem that I noticed, and I've talked about this before. Whenever you would see something successful, like a buddy cop movie, if there was Lethal Weapon, for instance, you'd get 10 variations on the buddy cop formula, and they were never as good as because in Hollywood you never get successful following trends, and yet everyone's starting, well, if this sold, we got to sell this again. You only ever get really successful in Hollywood. You set a trend. You set a trend through an original movie. Now that doesn't mean you can't go make a sequel to that movie and then also, be successful. But you've got to set a trend. For the most part, if you really look at, while yeah, there's a lot of sequels, but you still had to have that original concept be successful. Rocky, untried writer, untried lead actor. I mean, not quite untried, but, and look what happened with Rocky. Stallone stuck to his guns and had that happen. The movie that I'm talking about tonight on Elizaviews, Whining About Movies, director Jean-Jacques Benet's Isabelle Adjani wanted to do the part, and he said, no, I want an unknown. And his producer was like, well, where are you going to find this unknown? How long is it going to take you to find this unknown? He goes, I don't know, but I want an unknown for the part. And Beatrice Daly is an unbelievable find, and it was amazing. So you still have to have an original idea. You still have to come up with something good. But what Sid Field did was it allowed you to quantify. The great thing about screenplay, for those of you who don't know, basically Sid Field has written a couple of books, screenplay being the first, I think, about how do you write a screenplay? What are the great elements of a screenplay? And it works. It works. And a lot of people follow that. A lot of people look at that. But like everything else, you still need talent. You still need a great story with great characters. You can follow his format all you want, but that doesn't mean your screenplay is any good. I mean, hell, just because everyone's typing their cover pages in 12-point Courier and they've got the screenplay format correct doesn't mean they've written a good script. And as I said, it's apparent in the first 5 pages. I mean, I hate to say it, but I can tell you if a script is good. Well, now I can do it in probably a page. But really, if your script isn't good, a lot of people will give you 10 pages, but I'd say first page, but just because you can tell from the writing. But if people aren't hooked by page 5, it doesn't matter how much Sid Field you copy or emulate. It's never going to work. Dirty Nerdy sends in a super chat and says, "Hey Rob, we are on lockdown here now in the UK. I'm glad we got you for company to take our mind off things." Well, Dirty Nerdy, well, I thank you very much. I don't plan on going anywhere, and everybody has been generously supporting the channel, which I very much appreciate, because at the end of the day, someone's got to eat here. And it's rough, but thank you for doing that. I love. And when I say support, I don't just mean financially. I'm talking even being here and sending letters and interacting on the live chats with people and going to the Richards watch parties for Elizaviews and interacting with this community. Even if you're not even interacting with me, I appreciate the support of the community and all of the people that join in on the live chats. I mean, right now, there's 349 people here listening live, and I thank all of you for doing so. And hopefully you'll all subscribe and hit the like button and be a part of the community and interact with the fellow imagination connoisseurs here, which I think is great. I mean, that's all I can do. All I can try and do is keep broadcasting and do so with enthusiasm. Like Robert De Niro said in The Untouchables, enthusiasms. Yeah, I mean, that's all I can do. And as long as people don't get sick of my ugly mug or listening to my voice, then I'll continue to be here. And I really appreciate that all the way from the UK, you're sending me good thoughts. It's very nice. It's very interesting. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, "Yaday Rafe Juckins, the showrunner of Wheel of Time, had a Q&A with fans about the show." Oh, man, I bet you were all over that. He confirmed that they work on all aspects of post-production for the 6 of 8 episodes that were shot. Oh, that they're working on post now. He and the writers worked on season 2 from home. Probably same for other projects. Yeah, one of the great things is I know that the writing is not stopped. The particular project that I'm working on for Netflix, and again in a very small way, that series work has never stopped. The writing staff is on it, and they are deep into season 2. So that's great, and that's how it should be going. And what's interesting is I think a byproduct is with these writing staffs that are working, they're going to have time to really refine their scripts. That's why I say, look, as much as I really despise what they did, how I see Picard season 1 as, and who knows, maybe they'll just stick the landing. But I see season 2 as a huge opportunity to really refine those scripts and make sense of them all. I think that's going to be only better for the show. And we know Whoopi Goldberg's going to be on. So that could be very, very cool. So I'm excited about that. Hassan sends in a tip and says, "Hey, Robert, do you think dystopian movies won't get made for a while after this pandemic ends? One more question. Is Wednesday's movie set in Berlin?" Ooh, is Wednesday's movie set in Berlin? You know what? I don't know if I should tip my hand. You guessed the last time I made mention of the movies. You knew. You threw out a few. You threw out a few movies that it could be, and you freaking nailed that shit, son. So I don't know if I should say if it's set in Berlin or not, because that would pretty much give it away. It would give it away. I mean, I already gave out. You and I are on the same wavelength. You clearly park your shuttlecraft in the same garage, but let me just say that since you clearly are on my wavelength, perhaps it is and perhaps it isn't. But Elizabeth hasn't seen it before. How funny is that going to be? Am I right? But anyway, I'm not going to say yet. Maybe I'll announce it tonight because Elizabeth doesn't know. She's like, how do you know what movies I have seen and what movies I have seen? And I'm like, honey, I can guarantee you haven't seen this movie. And she's like, how do you know? I go, oh, because I know. I mean, I know. It's been sitting on the shelf staring at you for a long time, but you have not watched this movie. But boy, is it going to be fun to show it to her. So yes, Hassan, I think you know that I know that you know. So let's keep that under your hat, at least for the time being. Bob Koal sends in another tip and says, to your point, I followed Sid Field's formula when writing a couple of sci-fi screenplays, and they're wholly awful. Laugh out loud. But it was fun, and I got some ideas out of my head onto ink. Yeah, but you know what? I mean, it's all about rewriting. If you've got some good ideas, to me, really, it really always comes down to character, story, and the quality of the writing. As I've often said, the key to screenwriting is your screenwriting has to be visual more than anything else. I mean, first of all, it has to be good. You have to be a competent writer in general. But, I always use the example. Don't just say a character walks into a room. Johnny walks into a room. That's not visual. I mean, it is, I guess, in the most rudimentary way. It's showing you, okay, somebody walks into a room. How does he walk into the room? A great screenwriter will say, slinks into the room, or slouches into the room, or bounds into the room. Give me something. Give me something that gives me a visual image. Somebody bounds into a room. That's evocative of something that that is, and a screenplay. That's how you write a great screenplay. Is you're painting pictures for your reader, and hopefully the director to be or the producer will pick up a script and is so visually captivated by your metaphors and your writing and whatever it is you want to do that they will jump right into it. So. At least that's what I think people really hope. So yeah, that's, but why not? Did you rewrite your script? I keep saying, did you take another shot at it, or did you just give up? I don't know. I wonder if they're any good. Luke Reichelt. I think it's Reichelt. It's either Reichelt or Reichelt. Luke writes in and says, hey, Rob, I hope you've been enjoying my letters. I have. You don't have to read out my big, long threat on air if you don't want. I was trying to be entertaining. Did you send me a threat? Also, you don't have to play the video I made for the Post-Geek Singularity, the science fiction double feature pop vinyl video. I haven't seen that yet. I did put a lot of work into it, and I would like to know what you think. You can just email me privately if you don't want to share it on air. I hope you get a kick out of it. Heck, I just haven't seen it. I'll have to look into finding that where it is. I'll have to look, but I will play it. Rick Berg writes in and says, howdy do, brothers and sisters of this. Howdy do, brothers and sisters of this here singularity. Hope you're all safe and well. I recently got notice that the streaming service Tubi TV is playing a Deep Space Nine documentary called What We Left Behind. It was available to view. I watched it, and indeed, it was really good. It is really good. I urge everyone to watch it, and will give huge insight into several of the topics recently being discussed within our community. Respect to all. Rick Berg, steady as she goes. Well, Rick, thank you for that. You're absolutely correct. I like that documentary. I thought it was quite good, to be honest. This comes from James Kevins. Greetings, Rob. Do you know, or does anyone in the Post-Geek Singularity community know, if there is an official name for the Vulcan salute introduced in Star Trek TOS? What a good question. All I've ever known about it is that it's the Vulcan salute. I know that Leonard Nimoy introduced it from his memories of Jewish religious rituals, and that is a representation of the Hebrew letter Shin, it is true. But no one seems to know what to call it other than the Vulcan salute, or the Vulcan hand salute. In this age of COVID-19, fears and personal distancing, many are suggesting using this as a replacement for the handshake. In fact, on March 10th, Gail Fashionbauer Cooper reported on CNET.com this article. Spock's Vulcan salute as a greeting reportedly spreads to Congress. Some Star Trek actors are also on board, but William Shatner has a different idea. Mr. Spock's Vulcan salute reportedly has moved into the halls of Congress. Lawmakers were advised on coronavirus risks by a physician during a closed-door meeting of the House Democratic Caucus on Tuesday, and one piece of advice is familiar to CNET readers. The physician told lawmakers to consider using Spock's Star Trek Vulcan salute as a safe alternative to handshaking, CNN reported. Yep, the iconic split-finger salute that Leonard Nimoy made famous, taking inspiration by a Jewish blessing, or from a Jewish blessing, and which we recommended last week as a sanitary greeting in these days of coronavirus, has made it to Capitol Hill. The physician speaking to the House Democrats referred to the greeting as the Live Long and Prosper sign. Minnesota Rep. Dean Phillips told CNN. Phillips did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Former Star Trek actors seem to be down with it too. Are George Takei, who played Sulu on the original series. He's tweeted about it. Actor Robert Picardo, who played the Doctor on Star Trek Voyager, retweeted the CNET story on using the Vulcan salute, and actor Will Wheaton, who played Wesley Crusher on Star Trek The Next Generation, posted it to Facebook, writing, "I'm all kinds of on board with this." But William Shatner, whose Captain Kirk character did the Vulcan salute a time or two on the original Star Trek, has a different opinion. "I don't usually handshake," the actor wrote on Twitter. "Sometimes fist bump. While at face value it seems funny, this is not actually a bad idea. And I think fellow imagination connoisseurs might want to adopt this. Peace and long life, Jim Kevins." I like that. I'm into that. I think I've done it already because I read that article as well. You never know. Let's see. No, I think I've already read that one. I'm looking for more letters, as I've got a bunch of letters here. Enterprise H, NCC 1701H, writes in, "Verifier of verisimilitude." A short letter for this one. "I've noticed two things in movies which I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on. Something I call pretentious visuals, which look prettier than they ought to look, like the fairy dust effect coming from the warp nacelles in JJ Trek. Ugh. There's something in modern CGI designs which destroy the charm in which Star Trek ships used to have, whereas this pretentious I speak of tries to make them look not just cool, but too cool. Like the designs or designers have got something to prove to themselves and try too hard to be cool instead of being true to Star Trek. If I had to describe it, TOS was real, but it looked fake, whereas JJ Trek is fake, but looks real." I like that. 2, drab realism. There are times when I watch modern movies and it looks real to the point of being boring, as if it drains the fantastic out of a thing which it is portraying. Have you ever experienced anything like it, and did it bother you? To flip the question, is there such a thing as a timeless effect which needn't be updated? Enterprise H. Well, I agree with you. I think it's a great observation. You know, the Millennium Falcon going to hyperdrive from Star Wars. Simple. The hyperdrive effect was fairly simple. Never changed that. They keep trying to change it. I don't know why. But I love that effect. I love the simplicity of it. I love how it all worked out. I think Star Trek going to warp in the Enterprise going to warp in Star Trek The Motion Picture is my favorite. They use laser light to do that. Ever since then, it's been sort of animated. It was never as cool, and it was never as effective, and it never felt as solid. You know, there was something really solid about that rainbow warp effect in the motion picture, and I loved it. The warp effect has never been better than in that movie. But yeah, I think a lot of the time, I think the visual effects, especially in the JJ movies, I get it. You're close to suns and all the flaring and all that, and the moving camera, which, you know, I can be guilty of myself. But I think that's absolutely, your point is well taken. You make a great special effects shot, but it's overdone, so it becomes fake. I get it. You want effect shots to look real. And I again, as the viceroy of verisimilitude, I do too. I have to tell you, you know, one of my favorite effect shots, like a space effect shot, there's just something about the quality of it. I think it's one of my favorite, the fact that I even have favorite effect shots, but it's the establishing shot of when you first see the shot of the ship that is taking everybody to Pandora in Avatar. I love that shot so much. To me, it's the perfect both when it's coming at you and when it's moving away from you, that effect shot is beautiful. It's stylized, but it also has great verisimilitude. That to me is all you need. You don't need a camera whipping around the outer hull of a ship. It's a great, great shot. And it's one of my favorite effect shots. If I ever made, like, if there's a movie that I've wanted to make for a very, very long time, if I had a chance to make it, a lot of it takes place, well, the climax takes place in orbit, Earth orbit. Some of the climax does. And I would want it to look like that. I would like the effect shots to have that. I would go to Weta Digital and be like, I want my effect shots in Earth orbit to look just, not exactly, but have that feel. I don't know what you call it. The design work of the ship, the color timing. Just love that particular shot. And I think a lot of the time, the problem is it's a philosophy. And remember, I've talked about this before, but all movies are made up. It's all a bunch of BS. None of it's real. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to create reality within the proscenium of the frame. I call it the proscenium of the frame. I know a proscenium is around a stage, but if it could be proscenium of the frame, right? So you've got whatever's in a movie frame, and all you need is the reality there. I mean, right off, if there's a light stand here or somebody's waving on the side, whatever, you just need the reality to be within that frame. Like John Campea said, maybe there's no other Robservatory except, look, maybe the Robservatory goes right here, like, wait, I can't push sides of the frame. Maybe there's no, out here, empty space. Could be. There isn't, but there could be. You never know. All you have to have is what's real in the frame. That's all that matters. So what you want to do in that frame is to me, you want to be able to create a reality. And the beginning of that reality is everybody understands that you're watching something that's filmed. So whether we choose to recognize it or not, there is a camera that is looking down on everything that you are looking at. Looking down, up, round. So we all understand, we forget it's there. It's a trick. It's a trick. When you're watching a movie, you're watching something that was shot by a camera. Like when you're looking at a close-up of an actor, you're not thinking that here's the camera and here's the actor's face, which is crazy, but that's the reality. It's not like the camera's like way across the room to get that close-up and you've zoomed in. I mean, sometimes I guess you could, but depending on what kind of lenses you're using. But for the most part, a camera's close up to an actor when you're shooting a close-up and the actor's acting. I mean, think about that. Think about the next time you watch a movie, the next time you see an extreme close-up or just a close-up on someone's face, think about the fact that they're acting and they're making you believe with a camera and a crew like a foot away from their face or 2 feet away from their face. It's incredible when you think about things in those kind of terms. But I think what happens is when you're talking about realism to the point of being boring or, as you said, fantastic escapism, if suddenly the camera, the virtual camera, or the camera starts moving around and whipping around in an effect shot, it shatters. It doesn't matter how good the effect shot is, it shatters the illusion because you're still dealing with the illusion that movies are made by shooting. You're shooting them. So we forget that there's a camera there, but the beginning and end of verisimilitude is to be able to use a camera and never make people aware that it's a camera. That's a camera there. And I'll give you an example. Like, if you're going to use a 50 millimeter lens, which is kind of like how people see, and you shoot somebody like this, you just do a medium shot and you put up the camera and you are just shooting 2 people come into a room. It's the most boring shot, total realism. But if the camera's on the same plane as the people, then it just becomes boring. Could be peak verisimilitude, but for you've got to pick a shot that makes it interesting. So every single shot that you are doing in a film, you're stringing an audience along from shot to shot to shot to shot to shot. So it can't just be realistic, because a 50 millimeter lens sitting in the middle of a room watching 2 people in a kitchen, say, cook dinner is like about the most boring thing in the world. That doesn't work either. That would be like peak verisimilitude. Why? Because there's nothing cinematic about it. So you have to figure out that happy medium. How do you figure out how to create reality that's also cinematic. And that's the key. Because it can be, I remember thinking, there's that movie, God, it's a prison movie. I think Kevin Bacon's in it. Kevin Bacon and Christian Slater. And I remember, and I don't remember the name of the movie. Why am I drawing a blank on this? Hang on. Let me use that newfangled contraption. Is it Murder in the First? Off the top of my head, it might be Murder in the First. I'm thinking Murder in the First. Let me check. Let me just check, because I don't want to rip on this movie without knowing the actual. Actually, I'll just look up Murder in the First. I think it's Murder in the First. Murder in the First. No, the movie. 1995. That sounds about right. Christian Slater and Kevin Bacon. I think it's Murder in the First. Now, I hope I'm getting this right. I remember seeing Murder in the First, and I thought it was over-directed. And when I say over-directed, they went for stylization by moving the camera around, and it's like, bruh, this movie is not, it does not lend itself to this. It does not lend itself to this kind of direction, and I found it distracting. And how interesting. So Mark Rocco, this is interesting. Mark Rocco, who directed Murder in the First, that was the last movie he directed back in 95. He directed Scenes from the Goldmine, Dream a Little Dream, Where the Day Takes You, and Murder in the First. And I remember thinking that Murder in the First, and he came out of the music department, so he's maybe going for that music video style. I just felt it was over-directed, and I thought it was distracting. And that was because the camera was moving around too much. So I don't know if I've really explained this as well as I should have. But, you never know. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Who knows? I don't know. But that's a very interesting question. Maybe I kind of got in the weeds there. Desmond Harris writes in. Desmond Harris says, "Hello, Toy Man, once again, and thanks for your show. Movie industry topic. Tokenized characters with ethnicity or gender changes seem to minimize original characters and stories of different ethnicities that are out there." You know what? I don't know where my phone is. I'm getting a phone call and I can't answer it. And not that I would answer, but maybe it's somewhere. I just don't know where. Anyway, it's John Campia calling me. He doesn't watch my show. Movie industry topic. Tokenized characters with ethnicity or gender changes seem to minimize original characters and stories of different ethnicities that are out there. I heard one of your patrons mention about potentially having a black or other ethnicity play Magneto, a black, and some time ago Bond being played by a black actor. It strikes me very odd to want that when there are original, non-tokenized black or different ethnicity characters available to explore with different stories that have their own fundamentals. As an example, they changed Valkyrie and Heimdall's ethnicity in the movies, even though Norse mythology is mainly white in ethnicity. Is that not like changing Falcon, Killmonger, or M'Baku to another ethnicity? Yes, there's a small amount of ethnicities in Hollywood compared to whites. However, it would be expected, as you explained, Hollywood was created and built mainly by the white Jewish community, so naturally it catered toward people who look like them. There are great original characters like Mr. Tibbs, Fire, Icon, Shadow Man, Dr. Light, John Luther, Mr. Terrific, and Killmonger, and many more to be explored. It is understandable a creator wanting to popularize a character. Would it not be more beneficial to introduce them around the more aged characters to get more eyeballs on them to see if it could take off whilst having its own foundation, or just introduce them to completely independently? Fundamentally, just swapping out ethnicity and gender to a character seems more of a barrier for more different ethnic characters to enter the landscape. Your thoughts? Thanks for your insights in the movie industry. Kind regards, Desmond. Well, Desmond, I think you're making an interesting point. There are black characters out there that we need to see more of. And I agree. I totally agree. And that's why I think that Black Panther was so important, and not just Black Panther, but all of the surrounding cast. The thing about Black Panther is Wakanda's in Africa. So if you were to make M'Baku, say, a white dude or an Asian dude or a Native American or an Australian Aboriginal character, I think it would be kind of strange to do that, considering Wakanda is African. It's an African nation. So it'd kind of be like if I went to South Korea and was making a movie in South Korea and just made everybody white, made everybody from Southern California. That would be weird. Like, why would you do that? However, obviously the Norse myths were, I guess, predominantly white because of where they were written, and I totally agree with that. But remember, when you're talking about the Norse gods and things like that, they don't have to be, especially it's not like Asgard as we saw in Thor with the Rainbow Bridge and the technology and the realms of man. Once you've done that, I think you can go anywhere you want. I don't see that Valkyrie, I think Tessa Thompson, her portrayal of Valkyrie, I really liked her as Valkyrie. I don't think that really makes that much of a difference necessarily. And Heimdall, I think they want to just get Idris Elba in there. I don't see that that's really a problem, just because the origins were Norse. The Asgard in Thor the movies is not necessarily the Asgard as depicted in the way they were written in terms of Norse mythology. But yeah, I mean, if you were a writer in a part of the world and all you were was surrounded by a certain kind of people, that's all you knew. That's what you're going to write. So, I get that. But I agree with you. I think that, there are a lot of, like, Mr. Tibbs. They call me Mr. Tibbs. It's great. I like the fact that we're going to see more and more black characters on the big screen. But you're right. I think, like, gender swapping, I understand why it's being done. I do. I understand. But, I think that I couldn't help but think, I don't know if anybody, it would really be up to, I don't know if I'm qualified to totally answer that question, because I'm not black, and I've talked to people that are black, and what seeing like a movie like Black Panther get made, or a movie like Moonlight gets made, because I think that real representation, to me, happens just because. You make a story about black characters like a Moonlight, which you don't traditionally see in the black community. You tell that story, and that becomes the representation you need. If you're screaming representation, look at how woke I am. I'm making this character indicative of whatever your cause du jour is. I don't find that, like you said, representation at all. I find it tokenism. And I think real representation is to just be very matter of fact about your characters. You put a billboard on, like, look at me, I am this culturally sensitive character right now. I don't think that helps. I think if you want to add an ethnic character to something, just do it. Look, Deep Space Nine, I use Deep Space Nine as a great example. Yeah, they did Far Beyond the Stars. They did that episode. But for the most part, they didn't. Captain Sisko was black. Those episodes were not about him being black. They didn't even lean into that very much. He just was black, and he eventually became captain. He went from being a commander to captain, Sisko, and he was a badass. And he got better and better and better as he went on the show, and he had a great relationship with his son. And it wasn't based on their ethnicity. It was based on character. He was a good single father. He was widowed. And all of the character traits of a great character, from not just science fiction, fantasy, or horror or genre, but any great character of fiction. Sisko was a great character. And he was a great character not because he was black. It was because he was sensitive, he was powerful, he was a great father, he was a great leader. He had all of those qualities that any person should have, that has nothing necessarily to do with their superficiality of the melanin levels in their skin or their secondary characteristics. That's not what make up human beings. You know, great characters come from within. And of course, they're informed by look, the real thing about representation is you want to give people a voice because you need to understand what it's like to grow up as a certain kind of a person in this world. That's what representation is really all about, to understand people's experiences of the world. You know, I don't know, I don't think it really matters what does it feel like to be black on a day-to-day basis, just how you feel. You have to know what being black makes you feel when you go out into the world. What is your experience? If you're black in America, what is your experience of the world because you're black? That's why we need more diverse voices, so we can understand people's experiences, not their superficial differences, but what their superficial differences lead to as far as their lives. What has happened to them because, you know, when someone who's black gets stopped by the cops and is pulled over on a roadway, they have a much different experience of that situation than I do. And it's that experience, that's what's important to share and to understand. So, to answer your question, yes, I think tokenism of any kind is wrong. You know, what we want to do is we want to tell more stories and have more characters. But it didn't bother me with all different, you know, we like, I watch Asian movies all the time, so I think it's strange when I hear people going, wow, there's no Asian representation in cinema, but I understand what they mean. They mean in American cinema, you know, like that's what we need more of, and I think when we have movies like Crazy Rich Asians, or we have more movies made by Asian directors like The Farewell, you know, you're going to see more of that. What is the Asian American experience like? And interestingly enough, when The Farewell didn't do well in China, people thought, well, look, it's about China. This is the thinking. It's about Chinese people. Why wouldn't it do well? No, it wasn't about Chinese people. It was about American Chinese people, which is not the same as people that grew up in mainland China. It's a whole different experience. And we need it's those experiences that we need more of. But interesting letter. And yeah, I'm not a fan of tokenism. I want to see more characters that represent more different kinds of people, so I can understand, and those characters will be injected with the experience of those creators, bringing what happened to them, and I think that's really important. You know, I think that's something that we definitely need more of, more characters. Dean Mikitich wrote in a letter and says, "Hey Rob, in the Post-Geek Singularity, Stephen Goggin wrote into you about 28 days later and wonder how they did Desolate London. You mentioned it was shot in the morning and they had hot girls to stop traffic." That's what I heard. I'm not sure about the hot girls part, but you're 100% right about shooting in the morning. They actually shot it in the summer, so they had more daylight in the morning and therefore more time. The reason they did this so they could start filming around 4:30 a.m. Then around 7 p.m. they would halt production, clean up the mess they had made on the streets, and let London wake up and get in on their day. So they shot from 4:30 to 7 a.m. That's what they did. They also shot on the weekends so they did not disrupt Londoners heading to the office to start their workday. Kind regards, Dean Mikitich. Well, thanks, Dean, for that. I appreciate that. I like hearing that. That's always good to hear that. So yeah, fantastic stuff there. And our man Roberto Suarez sends in a letter. Rob, I just submitted my second video to the PGS, to the Dropbox. This one is about one of my all-time favorite fantasy series, ElfQuest. I hope you like it. I like ElfQuest. I know that during these challenging times, you and Elizabeth have experienced some financial setbacks due to social distancing. Absolutely. Please feel free to add this video, not just to your regular shows, but also as a part of your pre-recorded content, if you'd like. Ooh, that's very nice of you, Roberto. I know it probably won't generate a lot of revenue for you, but I enjoy doing these pieces, and I feel like it's one way I can contribute to the network. So if you'd like to have an unofficial Burnettwork correspondent, please feel free to add these videos to your queue if you think they'll help in any way. Man, first of all, it's not just, that's very, very kind of you. Perhaps they can be Robservations with Roberto or something like that. Ooh, I like that. The next one I'm planning to do on the future is James Bond actors. I hope you and yours are well. My family and I are coping as we adapt to doing much of our work from home. Take care and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Well, Roberto, Roberto Suarez, for those of you who don't know, I actually got to meet him up in Portland. That is very, very generous, sir. And I will put it up, and I'll put it on the channel. And I think having I'll do an intro for it, and I'll put it up. What a great idea. ElfQuest, Richard and Wendy Peeney. I'm an ElfQuest fan. I became an ElfQuest fan. I started reading ElfQuest when Marvel was reprinting ElfQuest, which I thought was pretty dope. So yeah, man, I will do that and put that up. What's not to love about that? And thank you so much. What an innovative thing to do. And I've liked your video content so far. How cool is that? Here's a long letter. Hang on, before I jump into that long letter, I will jump back and see what is going on over here. And let's see. Claudius sends in a tip and says, "Bonsoir, Monsieur Burnett. L'Observatoire du Cinema. I can't pronounce that. Maybe I'll get Elizabeth to speak French, but she won't do it. So the Dream Factory is temporarily shuttered. So we signed with the Criterion Channel. My wife and I will watch Betty Blue in preparation for tonight. By the way, what happened to the Armor review? Oh, the review of Armor, the book. Can you still see it? Or maybe I moved it. I moved it. The John Stakely book. I need to get into that. It's been so long since I've read it, though. I should reread it. And I'm going to do it. I promise I will. But I can't wait to hear what you guys thought of Betty Blue. It was great watching it again. And watching the documentary that Second Sight Home Video produced. So, yeah, tune in. But that's right. Tonight, on Elizaviews Whining About Movies, we will be talking about Jean-Jacques Benet's and his film, his third feature film, actually, Betty Blue. Tune in. Should be fun. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, as an experienced script reader, I'd bet you can spot a bad script pretty fast. You can. It's probably like you can determine if a meal you're eating has been cooked by a master chef or by a home cook. You can taste it after a few bites. You don't have to eat it all. No, it's true. It really is true. You can tell very, very, very quickly. Very quickly. BL Alley is here. Rob, in response to your invitation for member-written fiction, would you permit me to post links to a few free samples of my work for the Post-Geek Singularity to read? Yes, absolutely. Put it on the web. Put it on the Imagination Connoisseur Gallery, and then send it to us there, and then post links to it here so people will know it's there. I'll retweet that stuff. Absolutely. Anthony Gonzalez sends in a tip and says, Cisco at first rejected going into Vic's club because he said clubs from that day and age would discriminate against him. Well, he's probably right. And I like that. I like that he said that. Good for him. Oh, Mukbang Reviews sends in a super chat, a very generous one. Thank you, Mukbang Reviews. Just supporting the channel and shows. Thanks for Rob casting. Did you see The Hunt? Thoughts? I liked it. I have not seen the Hunt Mukbang Reviews, but I want to thank you for supporting the channel that way. I want to report it. I want to watch it. I do. I always talk about how I love movies about people hunting humans or humans hunting humans, and I think I will. I really want to see The Hunt. I want to see what they do. This is a letter from John D. John D. writes in, hey, Rob, I can't even read. Let me just get some water here. John D. Hey, Rob, I apologize ahead of time for the length of this letter, and I understand if it's too long to read on air, but I just have to get this off my chest. So strap yourself in and enjoy the ride. These are certainly crazy, crazy times, fear and uncertainty at almost every turn, and probably miles to go before we sleep, But just found myself sitting around and thinking this weekend about the ridiculous notion of all film is subjective. Uh-oh. It just got my goat yet again, but perhaps even to a higher level this time, and got to thinking, there's got to be a way of judging a film or a work purely or solely on its own merits. But who decides those merits? I remember back in my school days, I never paid much attention to my high school or college lit classes. Weren't my cup of tea, really, come to think of it. Tea isn't my cup of tea either, but that's a kettle of a different color. I thought I recall hearing things my teachers would bring up for why this essay was actually good, or why some Shakespeare piece was truly a masterpiece, when the student would claim it was trash or boring. Look, this is my problem. Somebody saying something is trash or boring has no bearing on whether that thing actually is trash or boring. And that's why I don't subscribe to all art is subjective. All art is subjective to you, but whether art has value transcends your opinion. At least that's what I believe. I honestly believe that there is objectivity to things. Things are objectively good or objectively great or objectively masterpieces, whether you choose to recognize that or not. I mean, I have friends that they won't sit through a certain movie. They're bored of that movie. Does that mean the movie's boring? No. That has no bearing on the movie at all. That's somebody else's having an opinion about it. But I believe that there's masterpieces that are objectively masterpieces. And that's why they transcend time. And whether or not people recognize that, you can't say that all art is subjective for the individual person. I agree with that, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that the art itself is subjectively good or bad. I think that the great art that transcends time, and who's to decide what that is? I don't know, history? But I think one day we'll be able to measure it. One day the effect of great art will be quantifiable. Right now we don't even know how to do that. But we'd have to figure out how to mention or how to measure these kinds of things, but I don't know if we can. Anyway, back to your letter. Why some Shakespeare piece was truly a masterpiece when the students would claim it was trash or boring, etc., saying it did this or it features this, or how could anyone not claim To Kill a Mockingbird was a good movie or a good novel? I really thought I remembered they'd point to it did this, or how this was explained or used, or am I right? Or just was I daydreaming during these lit classes? I don't know. I think you probably weren't daydreaming. Now, I suppose I could see someone saying To Kill a Mockingbird didn't work for them, meaning simply that they just didn't like it. That's their choice. But this doesn't mean it's not intrinsically, inherently a good work, does it? My man, you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. I think there's many, many books just like this. Huckleberry Finn, to name just one. I think we're getting the line blurred between something that a person might not like and being able to say all books are subjective, all movies are subjective, or even all art is subjective. Let me go off on that last tangent for a second. I remember thinking my entire life, and while not anywhere near your status of a middle-aged man with one foot in the grave, I do have plenty of life experience, that any painting I ever saw by Picasso was just plain crap. I just didn't get it. But there obviously are plenty who think they're great because they'll spend millions of dollars on just one. And it can't be solely because they're scarce. I remember when I was a young lad, my older brother had this money-making scheme to put up a sign in the window, John's Scribble Scrabbles, 5 cents. He might have sold one to my mom, but nobody would pay millions for that Scribble Scrabble today, even if there's just one by me in existence. Or on the other side of the issues, I know John is famous for saying, John Campia, I wish I could draw. I've always wanted to be able to, but I suck at it. I'm awful. But how does he know that it's really inherently bad? Maybe the greater art community would think he's the next Picasso, and just John and his close circle of friends doesn't like it. What if the world thinks they're incredible and would pay millions? How can he just look at his art and say it's not opinion, it's just bad? So, what is it that makes a Picasso painting great? What makes A Rose for Emily, Flowers for Algernon, The Telltale Heart, The Headless Horseman, or even Shakespeare works truly great? I don't think it's just that some people like them. They'd have died out long ago after being overwhelmed with all the newer stuff that comes out in the many, many years since. But what is there about works like these that make the greater community say they are great? Or, in the realm of movies, there must be something about the original Star Wars that makes it inexplicably a masterpiece. If not, then for the hundreds and hundreds or thousands of wide-release films since 1977, yes, I was there with my mom who'd done up her hair in buns on both sides, just like Princess Leia, and we waited in a long line around the movie theater just for a chance for a ticket. Heck, I remember once begging her to stop on a hill near a drive-in movie because the original Star Wars film was at a really good part and I had to see it. We were pretty poor and she couldn't afford to keep taking me time and time again. But I digress. People would have long ago forgotten about the original Star Wars if for no other reason than it just got lost in the deluge of newer movies since. There must be something we can point to of why it's an example of good filmmaking. Why the Godfather trilogy is thought to be one of the best movie collections of all time. The original Ben-Hur, the Ten Commandments. These are classics. What makes them so? Maybe someone just didn't like one of these, but they're so overwhelmingly acknowledged as great examples of cinema that there must be concrete reasons as to why we think so. Sorry I've gone on far too long, but it's really bugging me. Please help me, Rob. Am I just going nuts thinking about the stupid virus nonstop and its implications to me and my students? Or am I perhaps onto something here? Please help. Well, John D., I think you're absolutely onto something. And I think there is something inherent that we might not be able to quantify it, but call it a sense memory, call it a genetic understanding. To me, the great stories are self-evident. They really are. And they remain self-evident over and over and over again as the years go by. And I think that look, I do think you have to have a certain level of intelligence and a certain level of education to understand why certain things are great, to even enjoy things. Look, there's going to be a lot of imagination connoisseurs. I'm sure people tuned in and watched Betty Blue last night and were like, gave up. You know, they knew I was watching it for today's show and whining about movies. Like, why would Rob, who's always talking about science fiction, fantasy, and horror on his channel, and verisimilitude and everything, why would he pick Betty Blue? It's certainly not in that wheelhouse. And I'm like, I like all great stories. I think Betty Blue is a great story. We'll talk more about it why on the show tonight. But to me, a great story, I learned long ago that I don't have to watch something that's just science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I like all stories because all great stories are about the human condition. And we all live in the midst of the human condition. So inherently, I think certain stories and the way they're told work within that human condition better than others. And the stories that really resonate and really transcend, they're beyond time and beyond space. I really believe that. I guess, if that makes any sense. But I think that's a good place to leave it here today, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all for joining with me today. This will be the end of Robservations episode number 370. I want to thank all of you for your ongoing generous support of this channel and the YouTube page, and both YouTube pages, Whining About Movies and Post-Geek Singularity, supporting the channel with letters, with contributions such as tips and super chats. I want to thank you for all of those things. They are much appreciated. But most of all, I want to thank you in participating in the community as a whole, the community at large. And it's a great community. I love all you guys and gals and gentle people and beings from all corners of the galaxy. Thank you for being you. And I want to thank my moderating staff and Mike Bodden, who put up that website. And he can't be here much because he's the mayor of an American town. It might be a small American town, but it's still an American town, and he's in the midst of craziness. I want to thank Detective Jim Boyers, who's probably great that he's retired because all that craziness that would surround him, but I'm sure he hears about it. I also want to thank, of course, Greg Smith, who has time to build his 1-to-1 scale a snow speeder from Empire Strikes Back to go with his probe droid and the Tauntaun, his group, his 501st and the Rebel Legions and everybody he belongs to and all those people. It's great. You got to go see them. They're awesome. And, of course, Jordy Lyons, who's dealing with craziness over in the UK, and Lewis Yu. Thank you for being the moderating staff that you are. The channel would not be what it is without you. And finally, again, I guess it's time to come to, I need to have that Lawrence Welk outro, you know. I will say this. I'll put up Roberto Suarez's video. How cool would that be? Add a new thing. New programming to the channel is always a good thing. And I want to thank, once again, all of you. But remember, people, wherever you go, you're going to meet people who have a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you in these crazy times, you got to stay safe. You got to follow these rules. Stay socially distanced. You don't have to go to the beach. You don't have to go to Runyon Canyon, which was apparently a whole mess yesterday. Just stay home and enjoy the simple things in life. Start your screenplay, write a book, bake a cake, play the guitar. I don't know, whatever it is you want to do. Build a model. But come back tomorrow. I will be here for Robservations episode number 371. And with that, I say, have a better day.